So, for the longest time, PlayStation fans have told you and told everyone that they don't care how much the games are. They're willing to pay $100, they're willing to pay $120. This has been the narrative for quite some time. And I've been saying this over the past few days, and it's starting to piss a lot of people off because they're saying I'm lying. But it seems more and more people are now coming out of the woodworks who turn around and say that they remember PlayStation fans actually saying this because they buy their games and they pay for quality and they support the devs. They don't care if they have to pay $100. I mean, Mike Ybarra, who turned around and was talking about, oh, I wish there was an option where we could actually tip these developers for the money, like Elden Ring. I don't mind paying an extra $10, $20, or even $30 on top if I could tip the developers. That would be awesome. Comes out 5 minutes later and turns around and says, $80 for a game? Psh. I mean, clearly it's the next road to trying to become relevant for some of these people. Even Grums has jumped on the $80 bandwagon because, well, at the end of the day, if the porn industry isn't going to help him, and the anti-woke industry isn't really going the way he's wanting it to go at this point, maybe this might be the way he, that actually finally levels him out. But obviously it's not. But you can see that high-profile names like Mike Ybarra now are trying to jump on and capitalize off this. When, just the other day, my dude was talking about tipping developers and giving them more money. So now that the developers are going to, the studios are getting more money, well, what's the problem, Mike? Ah, I see. At the time, it made you look good by trying to say you wanted to pay more. I'm not really getting that. But anyway, that's not really the point of discussion here. The point of the discussion, obviously, is the fact that these prices seem to be region specific. Now, when I've been checking out these prices here in the UK, they've been drastically different. In fact, Donkey Kong Bonanza is actually £58 digital here in the UK. Mario Kart World, I think it's called, is actually £70. You can get it as low as £70 at the moment, physical, which is different to the $90 that you're getting in the US. And don't forget, we're actually paying $70, tax included. The $90 is tax not included. So there seems to be a bit of a discrepancy here. But it seems all of that came to a head today. One with the PlayStation fans crying because they are a bunch of hypocrites who can't actually stand behind anything they say. At the time, we're willing to pay $100, and now that the games are $90 to $80, oh my god, this is the end of the world. How can Nintendo do this? But you bet your bottom dollar that if Sony was the one that raised the price, they would have lapped that stuff up immediately. But you know what? Let's get into the video. Let's have the drop, because it's quite interesting what's actually transferring here. Alright, so we come over here and we can immediately see push square. Almost all PS5 fans are against $80 games. But at the time, they were saying that they were. And you've got Hazardor Gaming here. The same people defended $70 games and argued it raises quality this generation, which it really hasn't. Then there's me saying those people, till not long ago, was defending $100 games. They pay for quality. That mentality changed real fast. It really did. And here you got Haru, right? I still remember fanboys on a podcast saying they would gladly pay $100 for PS5 games. And if you're wondering which podcast this actually was, this is Mooch's podcast that they were saying it on, right? You had the whole bunch of the PlayStation fans in there, kind of, tapping themselves on the back, and each of them was saying, I'd be happy to pay quality, $100 games. I'd be happy to do that because we buy our games. But that, that changed really quickly once it actually became a real thing, which goes to show that, it's all talk when it comes to these fanboys. Real talk. None of them actually have the bottle to stand behind what they actually said and turn around and say, I said it and I mean it and I defend this. Obviously, I've been against this the whole time, especially going all the way back to the PS5 Pro pricing, which would have led to some stupidness. But it doesn't seem like it's actually Nintendo doing this deliberately. You see, in the political world, there's these things called tariffs, and they've been hitting the technological department quite heavily, especially in countries like Japan and China, where China has been hit by like 34%. And though they have tried to railroad it a little bit, well, they have been railroading it in the past, it seems like those tariffs are now being passed over to the consumer. But it's not ending there. It turns out that, as a breaking news earlier today, Nintendo is delaying the Switch 2 pre-orders in the US due to Trump's tariffs. Now, this is not unexpected. The Switch is basically $450 in the US pre-tax with just the console on its own, and then I think it was $500, $499 with the bundled Mario Kart. Now, people are assuming it's going to be $549 inbound. I'm actually thinking it's going to be closer to $600 or $700 with the, the tariffs in place. I mean, that's real. I mean, I'm not even just saying this to be a nuisance or try to annoy people. I'm actually being realistic. This is why, yesterday in my podcast, I was actually saying, if you are in the US and genuinely interested in buying one of these, buy it within this first allocation, because this kind of thing, this sort of thing is going to happen with the next allocation. But it looks like those tariffs, they might actually be retroactive, which means that these countries are now being charged that extra tax. If that's the case, and it seems like it is, these prices are about to escalate quite a bit. But the disappointing thing here is the fact that the Switch 2 has been delayed in the US, and this is all because of the tariffs. Now, you've got an article here that's basically that I clicked through. In the statement released by Nintendo, the company says it needs to assess the potential impact the tariffs will have on the US market before allowing purchases. Essentially, it's going to increase prices. Now, the base model is, in my opinion, likely going to go from $450 to $600, maybe $550 at the cheapest, but I can see it going all the way to $600, and this is pre-tax. And then I can see the bundled version going all the way up to like $700. It's crazy what is going on at the moment, and the tariff wars have well and truly begun. Pre-orders of the Nintendo Switch 2 in the US will not start until April 9 in order to assess the potential impact of tariffs and evolving market conditions. The company said Nintendo will update timing at a later date. The launch date of June 5th, 2025 is unchanged. So they're still releasing it on time, but it looks like pricing in general could be changed. And that's all dependent on the actual impact these tariffs are going to have. Really, really bad times. Trump announced the tariffs just hours after Nintendo Switch 2 Nintendo Direct event. There was no way of Nintendo actually knowing what was going to happen, and it's not unexpected that this delay has come into place. As part of its tariffs, countries like Vietnam and Cambodia, where Nintendo moved Switch 2 production to, and honestly, this isn't just a Nintendo thing. Other organizations have done the same, because it was cheap to import your stuff from Vietnam and Cambodia. So they were using factories in those countries to get their goods at a lower rate into the US, rather than paying the actual rate from where they should do, whether it was going to be in China or Japan. So they've kind of been cheating the system a little bit, but Trump has basically put a stop to that. So these countries were hit with rates of 46 and 49% respectively. So Vietnam has been hit with 46%, Cambodia 49%. That's a big hit. This led to wide speculation of the price of the system in the US based on Nintendo's response. It seems they are concerned about it as well and are set to reevaluate their plans. So that 46 and 49%, depending on what it was previously, because I don't have those numbers, that essentially, if you're just looking at it from the way business works, whatever that difference is going to get passed on to the consumer. Hence why I'm saying the base console at $449 could quite easily go up to $600, and the bundled console at $500 could easily go up to $700. But it's okay, right? Because people are happy to pay £700 for a PS5 Pro. This is a handheld device at the end of the day that has a dock, so in theory it should be expensive anyway. It is being heavily subsidized, but there's no way Nintendo is going to take that much of a hit on these devices. But people were happy to pay £700 for that. That's just opened the floodgate for stuff like this. Because at the end of the day, if people rejected that £700, £800 pricing of, or $700, $800, $900 pricing of the PS5 Pro, they probably wouldn't have even contemplated going down this route with extortionate prices. But the fact that people were willing to pay for that, well, that changes things. And businesses look at that and they know that people are going to want to buy the Switch 2. Now, keep in mind, this is really affecting certain countries only. I can say that the UK is not being affected by this. What do you think of the Switch 2 pre-orders being delayed in the US because of Donald Trump's tariffs? Let us know in below. I think it's pretty crazy, honestly. And as you can see here, multiple sources are mentioning that the pre-orders of Nintendo Switch 2 will be delayed in the US due to new tariffs. This is from Polygon. Nintendo has delayed pre-orders in the United States for the Switch 2 in response to sweeping new tariffs outlined by the Trump administration earlier this week. Now, there's two ways of looking at this, right? One, the console is being re-evaluated, but then was the pricing of the games and the hardware of the cartridges factored? Were the tariffs factored in for those and not the hardware, or was Nintendo realistically not expecting as big as a hit to those countries, and were the cartridges being manufactured in places like China or Japan? Because that's the only way I can see this actually making sense, where the hardware is being built in Vietnam, Cambodia, and shipped, well, it's being shipped from those factories, whereas the cartridges were being shipped from another. Therefore, the cartridges are actually getting increased in prices because of the extra tariffs. It's all a bit weird, but in a weird way, it makes sense. Pre-orders were scheduled to begin on April the 9th, but have been delayed indefinitely. Switch 2's launch date in the US is still set for June 5th. However, the pre-order has now just dropped completely. Pre-orders for Nintendo Switch 2 in the US will not start April 9th, 2025, in order to assess the potential impact of tariffs evolving market conditions. Nintendo said in a statement provided to Polygon. Nintendo will update timing at a later date. The launch date of June 5th, 2025 is unchanged. So, at least the launch date isn't changing, but it's going to be very interesting to see how these pricings is actually going to affect the overall thing. But it's crazy what's going on, and this is obviously just a Switch right now, but this is going to have a massive knock-on effect for anything else that's being manufactured from overseas that's going to go into the US. You know, graphics cards like the 5090 that are £2,000 MSRP or $2,000, which you can't find really. They're like $3,500 now. If you're trying to get from a retail store, they're going to be like $5,000 now. It's crazy. This is insane. The markup of these things is astronomical. $750 Switch 2 incoming. Just checked, and reports are around 600, and that's for the base. So this is exactly what I was saying. This is where I'm thinking. That's the base, and with the actual game, it's going to be somewhere like $650, $700. Or it's astronomical, but it will, it's not unexpected. I thought by them getting the consoles into the country earlier, this would have actually helped it. Now, my previous videos that I made, which angered a lot of people, was talking about how PlayStation fans were happy with this sort of thing. They were happy to support the developers, they're happy to pay $100, but this is the world that awaits. So yeah, overall, this is just really messed up, and it's really unfortunate for those in the US, because things are probably going to get worse, especially now that China has turned around, and from what I've read, they've added additional 34% tariffs to the US. So Trump is most likely going to retaliate to that, which will have a definite knock-on effect to everything else coming into the US that's going to be, part of those tariffs, especially with the tech goods. It's just a thing. But hey, we are where we are right now. I get Nintendo fans are upset. They have kind of every right to be upset, because they were not expecting this. They weren't expected to be bamboozled in this way. $80, $90 games is just not it, especially when you're talking about getting games on a key. Like the physicals that give you the key, I get it, they've got sell-on value, but still, at some point, they should just fix a system where you can trade in your digital licenses and be done with it. that key card is just pointless. But the only people, in my opinion, that don't really have a leg to stand on, that are complaining, is really the PlayStation fans, because they were happy to champion this. They were saying they would be more than happy. They were all in Mooch's, podcast at the time, and they were all agreeing, stroking each other's egos that $100 games is fine. They're happy to pay that with the rising, ballooning costs of gaming. Now, those same people are crying and moaning and all over social media complaining that there's no way, Nintendo has no right to do this. I don't know, you make it make sense. But it looks like the pricing for Nintendo Switch 2 is going to go up. The games seem to be region specific, having checked the UK, like I said earlier. Donkey Kong Digital is £58, physical is £66, £8 more rather than the $10 charge more that you have in the US between digital and physical. So for us, it's roughly about the same price as it was previously. I'm not really seeing any real change, maybe by a couple of quid here and there, but that's not going to break the bank. But when you go from $70 games to $90 games, and then those ones are basically telling you that they're keys as well, there's a real problem there. And I really hope the situation resolves itself relatively quickly, but I just don't think it will. And I think these prices are going to escalate as more and more countries decide that they're going to fight back and challenge these tariffs. And I don't think anyone is really going to back down. It's going to be bad times for gaming and the tech industry, I'll say that much, as more and more people are going to be alienated from either just buying tech equipment or buying games or just enjoying. I guess subscription services now are going to be the key way to enjoy games. Welcome to Game Pass. And with that, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe, hit that bell to stay up to date of all content I release. If you want to support me further, you can do that by hitting that super thanks and leaving a comment below, or by becoming a member on my channel. You can also join my Discord where we continue these conversations throughout the week. Either way, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Remain legend.